To Kill a Mockingbird is based in the prejudiced town of Macomb, Alabama in the 1930s. This story is told through the eyes of young narrator Scout Finch, who is truly innocent. By her memory and as readers, we encounter Mrs. Dubose for the first time when Scout and her brother Jem are walking on their way to town. In Scout's point of view, and as to what she could understand, the siblings hated her. In her words, if she was on the porch when we passed, we would be raked by her wrathful gaze, subjected to ruthless interrogation on our behavior, and given a melancholy prediction on what we would amount to when we grew up, which was always nothing. On this Saturday, Mrs. Dubose is out on her porch when she stops the children and questions where they are going, even throwing in that they are playing hooky. She also states how disgusted she is at how one of the Finches, Atticus, who is their father, is in the courthouse lawing for N-words. Her expression of her views on Atticus and his decision to defend Tom Robinson, a black man, angers Jem. This anger leads Jem to cut the tops off of every camellia bush Mrs. Dubose owns. He also snaps the baton that he buys for Scout in two. As a consequence for his actions, Mrs. Dubose makes Jem come every afternoon and on Saturdays to read to her for 2 hours. This serves as a distraction for Mrs. Dubose as she battles against her addiction to morphine, though the children do not know this at the time. During this, Mrs. Dubose has fits and spasms, along with saliva dripping down her chin. The ringing of the alarm on the nightstand would then dismiss Jem and Scout from her house because it was time for her medicine. The alarm clock in the window of the house stands as a symbol for time as well as freedom. This is because Mrs. Dubose only has so much time left in her life, and it shows how the days for her are numbered and how the seconds she has are ticking by slowly. Along with this, it represents the freedom for the children because it is their signal to leave the house and enjoy the rest of the afternoon they have. Now, after nearly a month and a half of reading to Mrs. Dubose in bed, the children are allowed to stop. This brings reactions of sheer happiness and joy about Scout and Jem because they are free. From this little skirmish between Jem and Mrs. Dubose, nothing described her more than mean, racist, and cranky in the children's eyes. However, throughout the brief chapter where we are introduced to her, we see that she is so much more than that, especially through Atticus's perspective. His thinking of Mrs. Dubose is then passed on to his children when he questions them to see if they knew that Mrs. Dubose was an addict. They say that they do not know, and he describes to them about her addiction. He also explains how she only had a few months' time left, and that she was determined to leave this world beholden to nothing and nobody. In the door, I depicted a strong arm as a theme of courage for Mrs. Dubose, and how she fought hard to battle her addiction. She gave every fiber of her being into dying without a drop of morphine in her, and this is truly commendable. Going back to Atticus's views, the children learn that he admires Mrs. Dubose for her bravery and courage. This astonishes the children, but Atticus teaches them to see bravery in a different light. He shows them that Mrs. Dubose is the real image of what courage is, not a man with a gun in his hand. It's when you know you're licked before you begin, but you begin anyway, and you see it through no matter what. Thank you.